Hey guys, and welcome back to Warcraft Daily for today, the 4th of March 2014. So, we have actually a few different good things in today's news. A little bit of a clarification on one or two talent things, there's a blog post as well associated with that. Then some stuff about Twitter, then Heroes of the Storm, the Miss of Pandaria Collector's Edition, saying bye-bye, and then a few little tweety type things, which I think I've already talked about. But anyway, let's actually just get into the main news itself. So first of all, in and around a week or so, but no sooner than the 10th of March, they will be taking away the Mists of Pandaria Collector's Edition. It will no longer be for sale, and that is of course the digital deluxe version, like the upgrade that you can buy to your pre-existing game. Now, what this thing contains is actually a Mists of Pandaria themed Diablo 3 banner sigil and accent, a Horde and Alliance themed StarCraft 2 portrait set, and then the Imperial Quill and Mount and Quill and Cup pet. I have the Imperial Quill and Mount in-game. I haven't really done anything with the pet yet, though I think I do have it, and I'll say, like, the mount's pretty nice if it is your kind of thing, so this is really the last chance to grab that if you want it. Now, of course, a lot of people, myself slightly included, are thinking that this is really just all part of the ramp up to the eventual Warlords of Draenor pre-order. When will that actually happen? Well, no one can really say, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it were to happen next Tuesday, because if you think about it, well, yeah, I think next Tuesday, maybe the Tuesday after that. The reason I say Tuesday is because, look, we all know Blizzard love their Tuesdays. And, yeah, so that's the thing. Now, the next bit of news is actually alpha-related, but it's not for Warlords of Draenor, though it is undoubtedly an alpha internally at this stage, I'd imagine. But yes, Heroes of the Storm is actually going to be entering its technical alpha. Now, what is a technical alpha? Well, it is supposedly mainly focused on getting a lot of their systems working right, and I guess just getting a lot of background work and early prep done for a main, larger alpha test. So that's fair enough. Now, as always with their NDA, not their NDAs, their alphas, there will be no, well, betas or, testing periods. There's going to be no NDA once it comes live, and I think that they are letting some international media people in. However, it's mainly going to be limited to the US. The reason for that is because that's where all their servers are, probably. Not 100% sure on the international media people, but I expect to see a lot of the Heroes of the Storm gameplay flood onto the internet soon. And it's like with the Warlords of Draenor beta, I'm not sure when that thing's coming, honestly. I mean, everyone thought February. Because if you think about how Blizzard usually do this kind of thing, the beta comes out maybe 4, 5, 6 months before the expansion, and people have been saying, oh, Warlord's probably coming, midsummer, that kind of thing. Well, honestly, I'm beginning to think that it's just going to be a shorter beta testing period. Now, in terms of how they'll do it, it'll probably be the usual press thing, which is, I mean, it's good and bad. I suppose it's kind of good and bad for me, because if I get in, it will be fantastic for, the channel and everything, but there is, of course, the downside, and then a major part of my kind of YouTube career is completely in the hands of a company who are they're very hard to get in contact with, so it'll be a bunch of fun seeing how that all goes. So yeah, hey, Warlords, it'll be a thing soon, hopefully. But first of all, Heroes of the Storm. As for coverage, well, I can say right now, I'm not in the alpha for Heroes of the Storm. I don't know if I will be, I probably won't be. And I'm not really much of a MOBA guy, honestly. StarCraft is my game of choice when it comes to strategy things, and I've played League, I've played Dota, and I just find them to be really, kind of a bit more slow-paced, like too slow-paced for my liking. I get there's a ton of depth and fun in there, but honestly, like a 30-minute game, of which so much of it is farming creeps, isn't for me. Which really is actually the reason why I'm looking forward to getting into Heroes of the Storm once it releases, because it is going to be a bit of a faster version of a MOBA. But for right now, my main concern is World of Warcraft. It's my main game. Alright, so next up, we have a little bit of chatter about talents. Now, they've posted a more thorough list of the talent changes, but please note that these are not 100% finalized, I'd imagine, and it's also not a complete list. I will link to their blog post, but honestly, just find any blue tracker, like on WoW or MMO Champion, it'll take you there. So yeah, on the topic of talents, I think some people were really actually confused as to why the Berserking and Blood Fury nerfs were not larger than they were, and Blizzard were quick to point out that basically since DPS snapshotting is being removed, they will already have been nerfed quite a bit. Now if you don't know, DPS snapshotting is when some abilities base their damage off a snapshot of your current stats, including things like your cooldowns. This would mean that if you used a 15-second damage over time spell on the final second of your Blood Fury duration, then the dot would, for the full 15 seconds of its duration, behave as if you had Blood Fury the whole time, despite the fact that Blood Fury was really only active for 1 second of the dot's duration. Now, because that's being removed, this means that these abilities will proportionally be a bit weaker anyway, so yeah, they're definitely bringing those down in terms of their power, and I think that's definitely right. And then they also said that the changes that they've made overall are just to make races balanced, and because right now some races do have clear advantages over each other. Blizzard would ideally have it so that you just play a race for its aesthetic and how much you really just like that race, not the race's numerical worth in terms of stats. Since it is a role-playing game and it's about choosing a character that you think is cool, I tend to agree. So I think that's definitely fair enough. Then also about every man for himself. Now this is a very strong talent at the minute where it will break you from a CC, and it's curiously missing from the list that they posted on that blog. So right now they said that there are no changes because every man for himself basically breaks a crowd control in PvP, so it's basically like an additional trinket. So what you gain with this racial is essentially an extra trinket slot in a way, and because of its power, they have not decided exactly what they're going to do with it because they haven't really decided what they're doing with PvP trinkets in Warlords, or at least they haven't got finalized plans. So it's very much to be decided, and you know what, I'd say nearly 100% certainty that this will be changed, because I think it would be just a little bit powerful in its current form. Alright, so with that covered, it is time to move on to the usual Twitter time, because, damn, if Blizzard developers weren't on Twitter, this show would be a lot shorter. So first of all, Celestalin said that all secondary stats will be useful to all specs, except for bonus armor for non-tanks, and then spirit stuff for healers. Now what this means is that healers and tanks will still have gear that will basically by default go to them instead of other people, so it does help out with competition, and I think that's definitely a kind of a nice way to differentiate gear as being, oh hey, this is a healer thing, you know? I think that's a really good way of doing it. And overall I like the idea of all the different secondary stats having, first of all, different effects in terms of your character, but also just applying and being useful to everyone in some way. Now, I recently have seen a few tweets from Blizzard saying that they are going to be emphasizing balance between all of these secondary stats, and of course, one I'd say will probably be better than the other, but I'd like it if those differences were not as pronounced as they were now, so all the secondary stats were roughly all about as powerful as each other. Now that said, just because of the way maths works, there always will be a best version. It's a thing of numbers, as we can't change maths. But still, overall, I think it's a very interesting way of doing gearing, and I guess because I haven't really played through the game with any of these gear changes, I'm going to have to wait and see, to know what I actually think about the whole thing. But I'm certainly looking forward to that. Anyway, so next, Celestalin, which I don't know, I think Celestian sounds better, but he spells it Celestalin. So, you know what, that's cool. Anyway, he said that Arcane is actually intentionally movement inhibited. Basically, the Arcane spec is supposed to be a standstill spec, and it's one of those drawbacks of the spec. So it's very good when it's standing still, not so much when it's running around. I think that's fair enough, because when specs are like this, it adds a little bit more depth into their gameplay. There's a little bit more strategy in terms of positioning your character, thinking ahead about how you can deal with upcoming fight mechanics and things like that. And I actually feel like movement limitations can add more gameplay to the game, really, because if you are, you're looking at your DBM timers, you see, okay, this boss is going to do an ability in 20 seconds. Now, maybe because I'm a, good, skilled, experienced player, I know where that ability will be, so I'll make sure to pre-position myself so that I'm in a really good place to deal with it. I think that's a really cool form of gameplay. I miss it with my Hunter a little bit, so I think absolutely this being the state of Arcane is a good thing, and I wouldn't be too sad if I saw this happen to some other specs, and that is, of course, including some specs that I personally play myself. Perhaps if Hunters would have a bit of a change to the Marksmanship spec, where Marksmanship is more of a standstill spec, because if you think about Marksmanship, it would make sense if it was about standing still, taking really good aim, and hitting a guy in the neck with your bow, and maybe running around the place doesn't really lend itself well to that. Therefore, marksmanship could be more of a standstill hunter spec. I think that would be really cool, and would add some different gameplay into the various specs of hunters, and perhaps similar principles could be applied to some other specs. I think it would be a nice idea. Anyway, so we have a few tweets from Watcher, and by few I mean one, because I can't speak right. So he said that on the topic of tank damage, he said that if they were to hit tanks any harder than they do now, they'd basically just be one-shotting them. But he does agree that there is the goal of making room for a dedicated tank healer is certainly a thing that he would like, and that one of the reasons why this hasn't really been happening the way they want it to is because of the prevalence of smart heals and vengeance. Basically, the tanks are kind of getting topped up all the time by default, so I think this is the sort of thing that healers will probably understand without me having to explain a great deal. So, you know what I mean, healers. Anyway, so he also said that making a decision about pressing a button is far more interesting than pressing a button and then having the game make a decision for you. And of course, it could be argued that hitting that smart heal is a decision within itself, but I think that the weight of the decision is diminished because the targeting and that sort of thing is actually done by the game in some regards. So I think that they should really just tone down smart heals, but in a way that makes sense, because right now with fight mechanics and the way some AoE damage goes, it wouldn't really be realistic to expect healers to single target heal everyone up during a massive AoE phase, and because of that, yeah, smart heals are actually worthwhile. But perhaps if they could tone them down in a few different regards, so that for single healing and just topping up tanks and that kind of thing, maybe there's a different way of doing things. I'm not particularly sure, I'm not a healer, but based on what some of the Blizzard developers have been saying, that is a thing they'd like to do in Warlords. And then finally, Dave Maldonado has made his triumphant return to the Twitter, and he basically said that a toggleable weapon enchant kind of thing for a visual effect is not really going to happen by Warlords of Draenor, but they are discussing it internally, so perhaps it's going to come in patch 6.1 or 2 or 3, whatever. I think that would be nice though, because while personally I really do like the toggleable weapon enchants, honestly, some people maybe don't, and if it's an easy enough thing for them to implement, then absolutely give more people more choice, because you know what, choice is a pretty great thing. And that's it for news today. I guess actually there is probably one thing you could check out if you're interested in it. The student art contest for World of Warcraft just ended, so if you just check the official World of Warcraft blog for that, you should find it. Some pretty cool entries, actually. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode. Really, I've been spending a lot of time both, like in real life, just kind of being terrified over, not terrified over C++, but sort of sinking a lot of time into it, and then being a little bit worried about Russia, you know, just a tad, because, wow, shit's going down, and it's seriously rather worrying. I don't know. I think it's the sort of thing where it's probably worth being in the loop with it. I'd recommend if you just go into Google and type in Reddit Ukraine, there's this Ukrainian conflict live thread, and basically it's live updates from a bunch of Reddit mods who are just compiling news information from loads of different sources. I found it to be very, very good, and overall it's sort of great. If you want, I guess, a more proofread source, you could try The Guardian. Their live blog is actually pretty good for it. They update probably once every half an hour or something like that. But anyway, you know what? Stay happy, everyone in the world. Some weird things are going on, and let's hope they don't really get any bigger, because people shouldn't have to die because of an international dick-waving contest. Yeah. Humanity, folks. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I will see you later.